Have you ever wondered if the person you trust the most could become the one who takes your life? In January 2024, investigators searched the home of a 66-year-old woman in Gulfport, Mississippi. Inside the living room, they noticed something unusual, a false wall that didn't seem to belong. When officers tore it down, they discovered a large wooden box hidden behind it. What they found inside wasn't old furniture or forgotten belongings. It was the body of a man. The victim was John Allen Gaither, 42 years old, and the owner of the house was his own mother. Her name was Jerri Lynn Roby. But this is far more than a shocking case of a mother killing her son. Jerri Lynn Roby was a woman with a dark and complicated past. Over the years, she had lived under multiple aliases, including Jerri Lynn Israel, Jerri Lynn Wynn, and Jerri Lynn King. Decades earlier, she had already been convicted in another homicide, yet somehow managed to build a new life under different identities. According to investigators, she shot her son once in the back of the head, concealed his body inside a wooden box, and hid it behind a fake wall in her own home for more than a month before the horrifying discovery was made. What could drive a mother to commit such an unimaginable crime? How was someone with a violent criminal history able to disappear behind so many different names? And what finally exposed the truth? Welcome back to World True Crime Vault, the channel where we uncover some of the world's most disturbing and unforgettable criminal cases. In today's video, we'll examine the complete case of Jerri Lynn Roby, one of the most disturbing homicide investigations to shake Gulfport, Mississippi in recent years. To truly understand this case, we need to go back in time and take a closer look at the woman at the center of it all. Jerri Lynn Roby was born around 1957, but even her identity was anything but straightforward. Over the years, she lived under several different names, including Jerri Lynn Israel, sometimes spelled Israel, Jerri Lynn Gaither, Jerri Lynn Wynn, Jerri Lynn King, and in some records, the last name Bogart also appears. The long list of aliases made it difficult to trace her past. But one fact remained undeniable. This was not the first time Jerri Lynn Roby had been connected to a homicide. In 1993, while living in Florida, she killed a woman named Christina Racy, though some court records list the victim's last name as Bracy. 2 years later, in 1995, Roby was convicted of second-degree murder and sentenced to prison. After serving nearly a decade behind bars, she was released in 2003. Following her release, Roby moved to Gulfport, Mississippi, where she lived with her adult son, John Allen Gaither. To neighbors and acquaintances, they appeared to be nothing more than an ordinary mother and son living a quiet life. Few could have imagined that the woman next door had once been convicted of murder, had lived under multiple identities, and carried a dark past that would eventually lead to another horrifying tragedy. According to investigators, December 10, 2023, was the last day anyone had contact with John Allen Gaither. After that, he seemed to vanish without a trace. On December 22, after days of unanswered phone calls and messages, John's older brother, who lived in North Carolina, contacted the Gulfport Police Department to report him missing. Detectives soon arrived at the home where John lived with his mother, Jerri Lynn Roby. When asked about her son's whereabouts, Roby gave investigators a series of conflicting stories. At one point, she claimed John had driven to Louisiana to sell a vehicle while working as an Uber driver. Later, she said he had traveled to the Philippines to visit his girlfriend. The inconsistencies in her statements immediately raised investigators' suspicions. Over the next several days, John's family continued receiving text messages and emails that appeared to come from him, making it seem as though he was still alive and well. But investigators later determined that the messages had been fabricated in an apparent attempt to mislead both the family and law enforcement. According to prosecutors, Roby even enlisted her 86-year-old boyfriend, Robert Tannehill, to call John's relatives while pretending to be John himself, helping to reinforce the false story. By January 18, 2024, detectives had gathered enough evidence to obtain a search warrant for the home. As officers arrived to execute the warrant, Roby reportedly swallowed a large number of pills in what authorities described as an apparent suicide attempt. She was transported to a nearby hospital for medical treatment. While searching the residence, Investigators noticed an unusual section of the living room that appeared to have been recently constructed. Behind what they described as a false wall, they discovered a large wooden box. Inside, they found the remains of John Allen Gaither, who had been deceased for several weeks. A subsequent autopsy determined that he had died from a fatal gunshot wound. Just 2 days later, on January 20, 2024, Jerri Lynn Roby was arrested. She was charged with first-degree murder and being a convicted felon in possession of a firearm. As the investigation moved forward, the seemingly unrelated pieces of evidence began to fit together. Lead investigator Justin Clifton and detectives with the Gulfport Police Department carefully reconstructed what prosecutors believe happened in the weeks following John Gaither's disappearance. One of the key breakthroughs came from Home Depot purchase records. According to investigators, Roby and her boyfriend bought 15 bags of sand, waterproof tape, straw, and large contractor trash bags during the very period when John was missing. Surveillance footage from the store also captured the pair purchasing those items. Prosecutors alleged that these materials were later used in an effort to conceal John's remains and delay their discovery. The investigation also revealed that, after John was no longer heard from, Roby withdrew thousands of dollars from his bank account. At the same time, John's cell phone continued sending text messages and emails to family members, creating the impression that he was still alive and communicating with loved ones. To investigators, these weren't isolated events. They were pieces of what they believe was a carefully planned effort to hide the truth. During a preliminary hearing in February 2024, Judge Albert Fountain ruled that prosecutors had presented sufficient evidence for the case to move forward to a grand jury. More than a year later, on May 22, 2025, a Harrison County grand jury formally indicted Jerri Lynn Roby on charges of first-degree murder and possession of a firearm by a convicted felon. More than 2 years after the case first came to light, it finally reached its conclusion in court. On July 22, 2026, at the Harrison County Circuit Court, before Judge Randy P. Mueller, Jerri Lynn Roby, then 69 years old, formally pleaded guilty to first-degree murder. During the hearing, Roby claimed that she acted in the moment, saying she wanted to end her son's suffering because he had been struggling with depression. But the evidence presented throughout the investigation painted a very different picture. According to prosecutors, the materials allegedly used to conceal the crime had been purchased in advance. After John Gaither's death, thousands of dollars were withdrawn from his bank account, and text messages and emails continued to be sent from his phone, creating the impression that he was still alive. To the court, those actions were inconsistent with a spur-of-the-moment decision. Instead, they pointed to a deliberate effort to conceal what had happened. After reviewing the evidence and accepting Roby's guilty plea, Judge Randy P. Mueller sentenced her to life in prison. Under Mississippi law, a life sentence for first-degree murder offers little to no realistic possibility of parole, meaning Roby is expected to spend the remainder of her life behind bars. As for Robert Tannehill, Roby's elderly boyfriend, publicly available court records indicate that he was charged only with hindering prosecution and did not face the more serious charges brought against Roby. The case of Jerri Lynn Roby left a lasting impact on the Gulfport community, not only because of the shocking nature of the crime, but also because of the difficult questions it raised. First, the victim was Roby's own son, and investigators discovered that his remains had been concealed inside the home the two had shared for several weeks before they were found. Second, this was not Roby's first conviction for a violent crime. Decades earlier, she had been convicted in another homicide case, served her sentence, was released from prison, and ultimately found herself facing another first-degree murder charge years later. For John Allen Gaither's family, who live in North Carolina and California, the tragedy was almost impossible to comprehend. In statements made to the court and the media, they described their overwhelming grief, profound loss, and disbelief over what had happened. The case also reignited public debate over how the criminal justice system monitors and supervises individuals convicted of serious violent offenses after they are released from prison. As of July 2026, There have been no public reports indicating that Roby has filed an appeal or is involved in any related civil lawsuits. She is currently serving a life sentence within the Mississippi Department of Corrections, bringing legal closure to a case that many residents of Gulfport consider one of the community's most disturbing criminal cases in recent memory. Jerri Lynn Roby, a woman who spent years living under multiple identities, was ultimately brought to justice not by a confession alone, but by the trail of evidence left behind. Purchase receipts, surveillance footage, a concealed wall, and the discovery that finally revealed what had happened inside her home. The case quickly became one of Mississippi's most closely followed homicide investigations in recent years. Not only because of the relationship between the victim and the accused, but also because Roby had previously been convicted in another homicide decades earlier. Cases like this remind us that the truth can remain hidden for a time, but it rarely stays hidden forever. Now we'd like to hear your thoughts. Do you think the criminal justice system should provide closer supervision for individuals convicted of serious violent crimes after they're released from prison? Or do you believe the current system strikes the right balance? Share your opinion in the comments below. We'd love to hear your perspective. And if there are other true crime cases from the United States, Vietnam, or anywhere else in the world that you'd like us to cover, let us know in the comments as well. If you enjoyed this video and would like to support the channel, please consider leaving a like, subscribing to World True Crime Vault, and turning on notifications so you never miss our next investigation. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you in the next case.